My biggest fear would be when the first comes and I don't get the rent.
I found that my tenant had dumped concrete down my toilet. Can you believe Fair Housing fined me $5,000 for that?
How do you onboard your tenants? What do you do?
I don't even know if I do it right.
If you're a landlord, don't just rent, rent perfect. The Rent Perfect podcast with property expert and private investigator, David Pickron.
Well, welcome to the Rent Perfect podcast. Today we have one of my favorite guests, the best attorney I know, Mark Zinman. How are you?
Oh, you don't have to kiss up to me. Thank you so much.
Mark, you're always a wealth of knowledge. I'm telling you, it is so nice to have an attorney that I can call, run things through, probably vent my frustration more than anything. You're probably like...
It's been a couple of those calls this year, no question. More like, what is going on? Please tell me I'm reading this wrong.
Right. I always love how I go off in all the ways I could violate everything, and you're always like, yeah, good luck in court on that. Yeah. So it's nice to have a professional attorney as a personal friend and professional friend, too.
I think that's why they call attorneys counselors sometimes.
Yeah, counselors. And you walked me off the ledge many times this year. But Mark Zinman, licensed here in Arizona. Anytime we have you on a national podcast, we always want to say check with your own attorney. Your own states have their own laws. We're having just a discussion right now, mainly staying probably in what we know, Arizona law. But anything to add to that disclaimer at all?
No, that's it. I'm just licensed here. This is the only place I practice, the only place I provide legal advice on. Obviously, some of the principles in landlord-tenant work, the idea underlying it applies across, but the actual laws could be very entirely different. So absolutely, you got to get your own attorney in the state, wherever your property is.
And CARES Act and CDC kind of pulled a state process into the federal light, too. So it's real similar to... For a lot of people. But so you just got back from court. What's court looking like nowadays? You still on Zoom, or what are you?
In Arizona, mostly stuff is on Zoom still. They're all kind of coming up with their different systems. They actually passed a law recently for Arizona to allow initials on evictions to be on Zoom. But some courts, for evidentiary hearings, are requiring attorneys to physically appear, which is what I did this morning. You know, if they need to test the credibility of witnesses, the judges want to actually see people.
Right.
It's hard to do that on a camera. It's really easier in the actual courtroom.
Right. So I imagine this COVID has changed the legal profession as far as Zoom goes for a long, long time. Yeah.
I mean, I actually like the Zoom. I mean, it allows greater access for residents. It's easier for the attorneys as well as witnesses that need to appear. Police officers, we've had more of them appear as well when they need to because, they don't have to come. If they're out somewhere.
Right.
They can just call in. It makes it much, much easier for all parties involved.
That's awesome. Well, appreciate that. Well, today I want to talk about, this was extended to July 31st with a caveat that this is the last extension. So we think, right?
The CDC should end.
It should end,
That's
right?
what we're expecting. This is the first time I actually do think it's ending.
Okay. And I thought it ended last month. I made a prediction. I was wrong by 30 days. Maybe I was just trying to hope it. But, if it goes 30 days, I'll take that. So I think now it is really going to end. So now is the time to really talk to our clients about what do you need to do. We've been talking about when this ends, but it's almost like the rubber's hitting the road. So I really want to talk about 5 things today. And number 1 has a lot to do with you. Unfortunately, in our world as an investor, I'm cheap. And a lot of things that if I can do it myself, I will do. But now is not the time to go this alone with this eviction moratorium ending because a lot of people think, oh, it's ending. We're getting back to normal. What is going on out there right now, even though this is going to end, that could be a challenge for landlords?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I've seen your thoughts on what what you're looking at here, but across the board, I don't think we're going back to what everyone thinks that there was ahead of time, right? I think there is renewed scrutiny on this industry that's never been seen, actually. And I think there's a level of professionalism that has to apply across the board. And obviously, you're talking here about attorneys. Yes, I'm biased. I think you should, if you're going into court, it's a smart idea to have an attorney. But everything has to be done professionally now because there's so many more hoops to jump through, so many more boxes to check to make sure you're doing things properly. And I had a ton of clients that would do their own evictions previously. And then they got one dismissed because they missed something. Then a second one dismissed because they forgot to bring something to court. And it's just like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
But I've been in this business a long time, Mark, and there's attorneys that are on my side But there's an equal amount of attorneys out there that with all this regulation and these hoops we have to jump through, miss one thing and you're in a lawsuit with them.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, for example, a couple weeks ago, the Consumer Financial Bureau sent us kind of a shot across the bow saying we're really going to be watching screening companies and how they report. And if you report anything wrong, you're going down. Just a warning, right?
Yeah, it's just a high riser on you. Be careful.
Right. Philadelphia last week, the city just came out and said, hey, you can go back 4 years on evictions now. You cannot use any kind of document or information in the last year to deny anybody that had to do with COVID, whether it was paying a utility bill, whether it was paying rent. You know, on the CARES Act and on the CDC, they said, hey, you're still responsible for paying. They made that clear. Yeah. Now we're seeing legislation coming out saying you don't have to pay, and it can't be held against you too in certain jurisdictions too.
Yeah,
right?
I mean that ruling that came out, I guess the order, the memo is not that it changed anything. Yeah. It's more like it's the same, but we're watching you. And if you mess up on one of these things, we're coming after you. Right. And for a smaller investor, that should scare the bejesus out of you that something you're going to get caught, something that you didn't know that's been there forever.
No, absolutely. So, number 2, I think that every investor right now should take a fair housing class. You should have took it before, but right now we should know about fair housing. They're going to get a little bit more strict. I know here in Mesa there's a few more protections added this year, had to do with sexual preference and stuff like that. I know in different states now source of income is a protected class, and you have to take Section 8 housing. So it's important to understand kind of what is protected, what is not protected. So I would say take a fair housing class right now. So where are you going to find those as an individual investor?
I mean, you can go online. There's classes that are taught. You can go to a RIA. You can go to a trade association. All of those are kind of options. I can't stress it enough, though. It seems everyone jumps into owning properties, and they're like, okay, I need to learn the Landlord-Tenant Act. And they forget that this huge elephant over here is fair housing, and it applies. I mean, there's exceptions. Right. I hate playing the exception game. I really think fair housing is there for a reason. You should follow it. But like you said, I mean, under the current administration, Biden has made it clear these things are important. On a national level, he's basically said sexual orientation, gender identity do apply under fair housing. So across the country, you can't discriminate on that. And, I would never tell somebody to do it anyways. Right. But now you need to know it is strictly prohibited. So I think under the administration, there's going to be a lot more litigation. They're going to push fair housing. Small landlords seem to be the ones that never take those classes previously. Sorry to you. That's just what I've seen. I mean, they're usually the ones that go, I didn't know. And I go, well, this is where you take a class. And this is a great time to start that, to make sure you're being more professional.
Absolutely. And I know you're the local attorney for ASRIA.
Yes.
How important is ASRIA for a small landlord?
I would say, I mean, truly, I think they're their sole place that a lot of individual investors go for education. Right. Education is the critical thing that a RIA will bring and offer to the individual investor that may not have other associations or not have, online classes that they have.
And if you're in an area that doesn't have a local real estate investment association, go to the National Real Estate Investment Association. They have all kinds of videos and podcasts and different things to help it, and you can learn right online, right in your own home. They also have Zoom calls that you can log in, ask questions. So RIAs are very, very important right now to educate yourself. We're also telling everybody you need to really review your onboarding process. And really what a lot of landlords didn't have prior to this whole COVID pandemic is a really good written criteria. They
policies and procedures.
Yeah, they just kind of showed up. I like you. Here's how much rent is. Here's a lease. I got from Staples or, whatever. And it is time, like you said, opening, it's time to make this a business, and it's time to make sure you have all your policies and procedures, and that includes a good criteria, a good application, a good lease, but really good policies. And so now's the time to do that.
Yeah, and people ask me all the time, like, what should my criteria be? As the attorney, I truly don't care. As long as it's not discriminatory, it really doesn't matter to me if you want the best of the best or you're more open to what your criteria is. Just put a criteria, put it in writing, and objectively follow it. So if you have an applicant come in and they go, hey, here's my application, you look at your criteria, and it's either yes, they made it, or no, they didn't.
Right.
And the higher you make your criteria, obviously there's a less margin of potential pool of residents.
Right.
or, but that's an operational decision.
But we don't know people's properties. We don't know if they're down in a struggling
Exactly.
area of town, if they're if they're a duplex, if they're a single family home. So we never teach this is what your criteria should be.
Correct.
We do send out a sample criteria. If you need a sample criteria just to what it needs to look like, what it needs to cover, you can email us at info@rentperfect.com, and we'll be more than happy to send that out to you just to get you started. We don't want you to use that one because that one's not made for you and your property, but it just gets you a starting point. So
to me, that's always what people have to realize. That's the difference between operational decisions, like what your criteria is, and to me, the legal decision of you must have a criteria.
Right. Absolutely. Appreciate that. And then the last thing, Mark, that, I don't know that people are really thinking about right now is what is the current tenant pool going to look like who are going to be applying at your open units look like when this eviction moratorium takes place? How many people are going to be out looking for a home?
I don't think, that is a tough question. Everyone's saying that there's going to be this eviction wave, which I don't believe in. I just think landlords are going to want to work with their tenants. So if you have tenants that are paying their bills and trying to and doing payment plans, landlords will keep them as much as they can because you don't want the vacancy. The turnover cost is more than there's a benefit there.
But I'm not even thinking about the ton of volume that everybody says they're going to be, but think of the percentage of the pool that is going to be getting evicted. Even if it's a small amount of people, you're going to have a lot of people applying at your property that possibly have not paid rent in a very long time.
There will be the portion. There's no question. The case I had this morning, they owe $14,000 in rent.
So you just kind of said what I've been telling people, and that is take care of the people that have been taking care of you the last year. If you have a renter that's paid you rent, do something for them. Say thank you. Lower the rent. Put new countertops in. Upgrade the floor. Whatever you want to do to say, hey, thank you. You want them to stay. You know who you have. And I'm telling you, if these guys made it through COVID, they're going to make it through anything.
Yeah.
So
it's a partnership.
It is. It's a total partnership, and we teach that here, and I love it. So take care of your good tenants. Don't be afraid to go over and just do something for them. And as this pool kind of clears up in the next 6 months, we'll get kind of back to the normal pool of applicants out there, and you can fill your properties up with a little bit more assurance that there's a little bit better people out there. But you want a good screening company. I always hate to talk about screening companies because it's me, and I don't want to be too much of a commercial, but you've got to do it. And not to give you the beginning to the end, Mark, but we really are pushing for smaller landlords who can't call the current landlord because they might not tell you the truth because they want them out. Right? They want
you
their
can't rely on that.
You can't rely on that. So here's what we're doing. 12 months bank statements. 12 months bank statement circled your rental payment going out of your bank account. That proves that you have paid in the last 12 months. Double check with your local jurisdictions because there are some cities coming out saying you can't do that, which is sad. But if you can do that, that is a way to prove if someone has paid their rent or not. Doesn't mean they didn't lose their job. Doesn't mean that they were on unemployment, but it means they made their landlord the priority.
Yeah, you just want to make sure, one, that the policy is legal, of course, but you want to make sure it's objective. You apply it across the board, and it's an objective standard as to what you're looking for, and that's what's critical from a legal perspective.
That's why I love having you on here. You bring us back and just say, stay consistent, and I really don't care what you do. Just stay consistent. Treat everybody the same, right?
It's an odd thing to say, but it kind of applies.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your insight. It is coming to an end. It will not be the same. But if you're going to stay in this business, it's time to really be a professional at it. Mark, thank you so much.
No, always a pleasure to be here.
Always great to have you. And until next time, continue to rent perfect.